Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. And in this lecture, we're going to be going over the homework assignment for Books 2. So the homework assignment for Books 2 is we are going to be creating a fake authentication model for our Project 2. We need to modify our API book login, the one that we already created, so that we will now consume an API header that will show a username attribute and a password attribute. And the book login will now receive a new query parameter of which book the user wants to read. So a user needs to sign in and it needs to return the book that is passed in as the query parameter. The user, however, must be called FastAPI user for the username, and the password must be test1234! If both the username and password are valid, return the book located specified by the query parameter. If either the username or password is invalid, return invalid user. And then lastly, call this new book login function after we call the read all books, just to make sure we have our inventory set up. All right, so let's go up to our book login API that we have already created. And currently our books login is a post request with the path of books login with a async def books login, where we're passing in a username and a password as a form, which we're going to need to pass in as the header now. And it just returns the username and password. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make sure that this is passing in a query parameter by adding a slash at the end. And right in front of this, I'm going to say book ID of type int. Username, instead of being a form, we need this to be a header. So we can say header of type none. And then password, we want to do the exact same thing. So instead of form, we want this to be header of type none. And now, most of the time, we want the API to still be consumed, even if username or password is blank, and we will just redirect and say that the user authentication failed somehow. So I'm going to make sure the username and password are optional. All right, so now we're passing the book ID, we have our username in the header and our password. So we don't want to just return this anymore, so I'm just going to delete that. And the first thing we want to check is to make sure username is equal to FastAPI user and password is equal to test1234! So we can do this by saying if username is equal to FastAPI user, and password is equal to test1234, return books of the book ID, location, and index, or we just want to return invalid user. All right, let's open up our terminal and type in uvicorn books2:app-reload. Open up our browser and refresh the page, where we now can see our books login is going to take in a book ID, a username, and password. Let's try it out and say 2. Well, first we need to call the read all function to make sure all of our books are added to the database. And now let's type in 2. FastAPI user with a password of test1234! Execute. And we get our book returned, which is going to be the third book because the index 2 of a list is actually the third item because it's 0, 1, 2. Now let's add a number at the end of the username. We get invalid user, and let's pass in a incorrect password. We're going to get invalid user again. So perfect. This wraps up this assignment. Again, this is not real good authentication as we are sending the username and password over plain text. We will get further in this course where we actually encrypt passwords and all that kind of stuff. But for right now, we did a little practice through our header and another query parameter. And congratulations on this assignment, and I will see you in the next video.